In political systems, where regime security overrides institutional pluralism, risk is not merely an administrative concern. It becomes the organizing principle of governance. Under such conditions, culture and entertainment are not neutral market domains. They are absorbed into the architecture of ideological management, tasked with guiding public sentiment and maintaining social stability. Within this framework, market logic alone cannot adequately explain corporate behavior, particularly in enterprises with state ownership or political embeddedness. Their decisions are governed less by efficiency or profitability than by political security. EE Media offers a revealing case. When risk control is elevated above all other considerations, uncertainty itself becomes the enemy. Program content, artists' conduct, public feedback, and even peripheral controversies are evaluated within administrative hierarchies in which accountability can travel upward. Management, therefore, seeks not merely to respond to crises, but to eliminate unpredictability at its source. This logic clarifies EE Media's distinctive contract design and signing strategy. Talent competition programs generate new public figures rapidly and unpredictably. Exposure confers influence. Influence generates uncertainty. In a political environment that treats independent influence as a potential liability, allowing newly visible figures to operate autonomously is structurally intolerable. Mass, centralized signing during talent competitions, thus functions as preemptive containment. By binding contestants to long-term management contracts, the company acquires control over creative output, professional trajectory, and public persona. Even if many artists remain underutilized or idle for extended periods, such possessive signing remains rational under a risk management framework. Idle talent is preferable to uncontrolled influence. In this setting, management contracts cease to be ordinary commercial agreements. They become instruments of containment, creative autonomy is restricted, scheduling and public statements are regulated, reward and penalty mechanisms enforce compliance. Long contract durations and steep termination clauses reflect the same principle. Uncertainty must be minimized. In jurisdictions governed by strong rule of law traditions, such clauses would face serious enforceability challenges. Under CCP governance, however, disputes over overlord clauses have been recurrent for over 2 decades without fundamentally altering industry practice. Reports after 2016 suggested that signing contracts was no longer formally mandatory for advancement in talent competitions. Whether analogous arrangements persist, informally, remains difficult to ascertain. For artists, contractual incorporation often marks a transition from active, self-directed creation to structurally managed participation. Because the boundaries of expression are tightly defined, ongoing compliance pressure encourages anticipatory self-censorship. Under Xi Jinping's emphasis on security first, organizational structures have evolved further toward control. Contracts increasingly operate as vehicles through which political logic is translated into industry practice. From the perspective of state-embedded management, leaving artists idle does not signify inefficiency. It signifies the successful neutralization of risk. In the calculus of political security, wasted resources are tolerable. Uncontrolled influence is not. A comparative totalitarian pattern. These dynamics are not uniquely Chinese. They reflect structural characteristics of totalitarian systems more broadly. In such regimes, high-visibility professions are inherently political. Visibility itself becomes a variable within the state's security calculus. Individuals who command public attention possess the capacity to shape perception and therefore cannot remain independent centers of influence. The Soviet Union subjected writers, poets, scientists, and military leaders to intense control and periodic purges. Osip Mandelstam's exile, Boris Pasternak's coerced refusal of the Nobel Prize, and the disappearance of senior officers during the Great Purge illustrate a recurring logic. Influence unmoored from state supervision constitutes structural risk. Nazi Germany institutionalized Gleichschaltung, or coordination, bringing film, music, publishing, and theatre under centralized propaganda control. For Joseph Goebbels, art was a strategic instrument. Expression diverging from official narratives was treated as political deviance. In North Korea, entertainers belong institutionally to the state. Political reliability supersedes professional merit. Personal identity is subordinated to national representation. Deviation may result in total erasure from public life. Early campaigns under Mao Zedong, including the suppression of counter-revolutionaries and the anti-rightist movement, demonstrated similar patterns. Individuals deemed ideologically unreliable were targeted, often not for overt rebellion, but for potential divergence. The mere possibility of independent thought could trigger brutality. Across cases, the pattern remains consistent. Totalitarian systems tolerate no autonomous sphere of influence. All visible individuals must be absorbed as instruments of the regime. High visibility entails high supervision. Insufficient compliance invites sustained pressure, marginalization, or elimination. Such comprehensive control arises from structural insecurity, where power is neither renewed through competitive elections nor constrained by institutional checks. Legitimacy cannot rest on procedural consent. Stability must instead be maintained through narrative coherence and suppression of alternative interpretations. Control over information and over the meaning of events becomes foundational to rule. In this context, strict management of high-exposure professions becomes a structural necessity. Whether in culture, sports, academia, or media, any domain capable of shaping public perception must be incorporated into the political system. Artist contracts, project approvals, public declarations during political events, and periodic industry rectification campaigns all serve to domesticate influence. The 2022 civil service controversy involving celebrity Jackson Yee was widely interpreted as a backdoor incident, with many questioning whether celebrities were receiving preferential access to quasi-civil service positions. Public backlash over perceived unfairness exposed tensions between popular sentiment and institutional processes, demonstrating that societal reaction can, at times, disrupt structural arrangements. Such moments, however, remain exceptional. From another perspective, the episode can also be read as reflecting an attempt to align more closely with the system. In highly regulated environments, formal institutional affiliation may appear to offer stability or protection. Yet the controversy revealed the fragility of such alignment when public perception intervenes. Within this broader logic, exceptional talent can paradoxically increase vulnerability. The more gifted and charismatic an individual appears, the more difficult they are to discipline, and therefore the greater the perceived risk they represent. Evaluation shifts away from merit and diligence toward controllability. Obedience, reliability, and the degree to which an individual can be structurally bound through incentives, contractual constraints, or other forms of leverage become decisive. In this context, Yu Menglong's talent, professionalism, and clean public image did not necessarily provide insulation. Insofar as he resisted compliance with unspoken industry rules, those same qualities may have heightened his exposure within a system that prioritizes predictability over independence. Theoretical interpretations. Political theory offers conceptual clarity for these patterns. Hannah Arendt distinguished totalitarianism from conventional authoritarianism by emphasizing total mobilization. Traditional authoritarian regimes demand obedience. Totalitarian systems seek comprehensive incorporation. No apolitical private sphere remains. Every individual must be organized within the ideological movement. What unsettles the regime most are actors possessing influence beyond organizational control. Michel Foucault's account of the panopticon illuminates how power operates through internalized surveillance. When individuals believe they may be observed, they regulate themselves. Under conditions of high visibility, self-discipline intensifies. Public figures engage in anticipatory conformity, signaling loyalty and demonstrating reliability before directives are issued. Giorgio Agamben's notion of the state of exception describes how legal boundaries become fluid under permanent crisis logic. Categories shift. What is permissible today may become sanctionable tomorrow. Instability itself becomes a governance mechanism. In such environments, highly visible individuals inhabit structurally precarious positions. Together, these frameworks reveal a coherent structure: total mobilization, Arendt; internalized discipline, Foucault; and normalized exception, Agamben. Under CCP governance, particularly during the Xi era, these mechanisms operate concurrently. Party organizations are embedded within corporate structures. Propaganda and regulatory systems intersect. Legal and informal controls overlap. Artists' visibility is instrumentalized for narrative production, while simultaneously treated as potential volatility. As political boundaries shift, the demand for recalibration intensifies. Centralization in the Xi era. The tightening of cultural control accelerated during Xi Jinping's first term. The 2014 Beijing Forum on Literature and Art reaffirmed the principle that culture must adhere to political leadership, echoing Mao's Yan'an talks. In 2016, the declaration that party media must bear the party's surname formalized the political identity of information institutions. In systems governed by liberal democratic norms, public media and state-owned enterprises are expected to serve general public interest rather than partisan structures. Under CCP governance, the fusion of party and state and long-standing information asymmetries obscure this distinction. Even where individuals recognize institutional shifts, centralized authority limits avenues of effective resistance. The stylistic transformation of the 2016 Spring Festival Gala, strengthening ideological messaging and diminishing commercial entertainment elements, functioned as a symbolic signal to the industry. Cultural production increasingly oriented itself toward political reliability. Xi's second term deepened centralization, especially following the removal of presidential term limits. Institutional checks weakened. Personal loyalty gained prominence. Legal boundaries displayed greater flexibility. Informal mechanisms expanded. Approval processes increasingly prioritized political safety assessments over professional evaluation. The result has been an expanding gray zone. Informal rules proliferate where formal institutional protections recede. Artists unwilling to conform to these informal expectations face mounting pressure, a trajectory likely to persist in the current political environment. High-visibility professions do not carry equal risk across political systems. Under conditions of centralized, security-oriented governance, visibility itself becomes structurally hazardous. Influence that originates beyond direct state orchestration must either be incorporated or neutralized. The entertainment industry, far from being a purely commercial arena, becomes an instrument within a broader architecture of political management. Contracts transform into mechanisms of containment. Compliance supersedes creativity. Uncertainty becomes intolerable. Understanding this structural logic is essential before evaluating individual cases. Personal trajectories are not merely the outcome of private decisions or isolated conflicts. They are shaped and constrained by systemic imperatives rooted in political security and centralized power. In the next episode, we will return to the Yu Menglong case and examine how individual trajectories are shaped by systemic logic, how personal fate intersects with centralized power driven by security anxiety.